Well, hello, good people. That was Fred's first run with Impulse Mag. You're going to say, scoundrel, blackguard, put the mag on without showing us. I'm going to put Fred away because I think it's about to pour with rain again, but let's go back a bit. The first thing I needed was a timing disc. I found a suitable template on the internet, downloaded it and sent it to the printer, and due to probable incompetence by myself, this was meant to be circular. This is an A4 piece of paper which has ended up having the sort of ends cut off, but it was meant to be printed out circular and smaller, but it sat in the printer for several minutes making dreadful noises and saying it had no ink, and eventually spewed out this enormous thing. And the digits are so big I think even Stevie Wonder could use this timing disc. Anyway, it's a bit of a blessing in disguise because I've actually stuck it to a piece of plywood and sealed it with a few coats of PVA, and it's now a master. So I made a timing disc using some cardboard. It's actually rather good. With a hole bashed in the middle like that, of course, you can very simply mark a couple of lines wherever you want. So I can stick one line there between 100 and 280, which does that, and then 27 degrees different to that, which would be there, at 73, and that would make it 253 at the other end. There and there. And now I've got a timing disc with two 27-degree quadrants, which is exactly what I want for the peacock conversion. Of course, I stuck that on the propeller hub, but before doing so, I actually stuck the faceplate on. This isn't the right faceplate, it's a Continental one. But any which way you want, you can stick 6 holes through with a wad punch, cut the middle out to fit over the prop hub if you need to, and you've got a timing disc. So in true Blue Peter style, here's one I made earlier. It's held on by the propeller. Fitting the prop is really useful because you need something to turn the crankshaft with anyway, and having the prop means you've got a lot of fine adjustment rather than just having your hands on the hub itself and trying to move it around. So the prop being on there works really well. I put a little brass pointer here. It's in the right place. You can pick any bit of engine furniture to put a pointer on. It just happens to be a stud for the fuel pump, which isn't fitted to Fred. That was an ideal place to put a piece of welding wire. I marked the disc up as well, so it's got only 2 things that we need, which is 27 degrees before top dead center, and I did this with the buzz box and it was bang on, but we're going to look at it again in a bit, and then top dead center. Now, rather stupidly, although in some ways it's turned out rather well because I can show you what I did, because I've got to take it apart again. I adjusted the lag on the magneto, and now I wish I hadn't. I changed it from 25 degrees to 15 degrees because I wasn't sure how accurate the markings were, and I thought they were under reading. But actually I don't think they were at all, because if I just come over this far, that's about 8 degrees before top dead center, and the impulse is firing. It's probably okay like that. I think the propeller would continue, but I don't want the thing to kick back. Chopping off hands might be a fun thing to do in Riyadh on a Friday morning, but I'd really like this thing not to kick back at all. And another 10 degrees would put the impulse firing just after top dead center. So I'm going to take the impulse mag off again and adjust it. With the magneto on the bench, I can just mess around showing the positions where the points open. I've got the direction of rotation here with an arrow, and there's a couple of white marks here with Tipp-Ex, and when they pretty much line up with this rib on the magneto body, then the red light goes out and the beeper sounds when the points open. I'll just turn this off for a moment. If I keep rotating the magneto in the correct direction of rotation, now you can see the impulse unit grasping the pawl, and so the center nut stops moving. You'll notice it stops moving now, and the impulse unit is winding up, and I keep rotating, And I thought that was more than enough lag, but as it turns out, when it's bolted up on the machine, it wasn't quite enough. That's now moved round, so I'll put the sprocket and impulse unit back on. If we hook the magneto buzz box up again, this should demonstrate that the timing hasn't changed at all in terms of the relationship of the sprocket and the timing marks. So in the correct direction of rotation, that's still the same, but there's more of a delay on winding up the spring on the impulse unit and when it releases. So I'm hoping that's enough now. So put the magneto back on. I've put a spark plug in the number 1 cylinder, so I'm just going to pull the prop around until we've got it on the firing stroke of number 1. There we are, got compression there. I'll take the plug out now. Okay, so the prop's in the correct position. I've just brought you around the back here to show you the timing chain. That's the chain over the crankshaft sprocket. All 3 sprockets are the same size. These magnetos run at crankshaft speed. And this is the non-impulse mag. Now I'm going to position the non-impulse mag in the correct place in a moment. And all I need to do once I've got it in the correct place is hang the chain on it like so, and it will be near enough for then putting the impulse magneto on as well. I'll just show you the cap of the non-impulse mag. See, that's the number 1, so the rotor arm effectively needs to be pointing almost downwards, about in this direction here. So I'm just going to rotate it to about the right place. About there. The non-impulse mag is now timed up and the chain is flopped over the sprocket. It's about right, there's fine adjustment on here. The impulse mag, of course, has quite a big sprocket which can't go straight through the mounting plate. So I have to position the rotor arm in the right place and then carefully slide this on from the back whilst engaging the chain at the same time. I'm not going to try and do it on camera. It was a bit of a sod the other day. It didn't take very long. I just had to have 2 or 3 goes. So we'll have a look at it once it's all together. I've wrestled the sprocket on and fine-tuned everything. The chain is the right tension, so should be about 27 degrees before top dead center. So the static timing of the mags is fine. Let's try the impulse unit. The wind up on this one. Top dead center. So just beyond top dead center. I reckon that's pretty much perfect. I'm going to put the exhausts on now, and I've got a couple of other odd jobs to do. And then tomorrow morning when it stops raining, no, if it stops raining, I'll push it outside and see if it starts. This is a Mercury air screws prop. It's 54-inch diameter, 31-inch pitch according to the stamp on it. And it was actually on the Luton Miner, built by the chap who built the Colditz glider. So it's quite a nice propeller to use because of that. I want to run Fred for a decent length of time, warm him up a bit, see if the other instruments work, because they all seem to spring to life earlier, but it would be best if we actually saw some movement on the gauge. And I'd like to see what RPM this propeller pulls as well. Well, wasn't that splendid? About 15 minutes in all, and far better than Saturday afternoon's fiasco. Let's have a look around. You'll notice the timing disc is back on. I wanted to double check the mag timing. One of the possible reasons why Fred was a bit reluctant to start was that the chain might have been a bit too tight. I didn't think the chain was at all tight, but a friend of mine said really got to have it on the slacker side of tight, because the impulse unit, of course, relies on one piece rotating inside the other. And if there's much side load on it, then it can slow down the speed at which the impulse goes round, which affects the spark and, more importantly, actually retards the spark a little bit more as well. It might be that I actually move the trigger rings back by 5 degrees and drill the holes again in another part of that aluminium, so I can just bring it round to a little more advanced so it fires pretty much at TDC. Because of mechanical lag, it's always going to fire after TDC. A few chaps have mentioned these chocolate block connectors, as they're commonly known. I'm going to replace these 4 wires here. These are the mag wires. I like them to be one piece with soldered ends. But these ones here are only taking a very small load from those torch batteries to run the cylinder head temperature and the oil temperature gauges. I wouldn't wire up anything that needed a very high current flow using chocolate blocks. It would be very inappropriate to wire Ted Bundy up using those. Turned on the grandiosely named battery and master switches, and there we are, 12 volts. And during those engine runs, both the oil temperature and the CHT were turned on. You can tell they're drawing a current because the needle goes down a bit. That one went about as far as C, that's the cylinder head temperature, and the oil temperature, well, it certainly went off the bottom of the scale. Of course, it was only a static run. You really need to fly it to get the temperatures up significantly, and it's got no cowlings on either. But everything worked. You might remember me removing the slip ball from that instrument. I made a best quality balsa wood and plywood housing for it, and it's either going there in the middle, or it can go on top of the hole where that strange manifold pressure economy gauge was. I'll probably do that first because it means I can get away without drilling any more holes. So the plan now is to take Fred back to the workshop, take the engine off, take the undercarriage off, and sort out all the slightly corroded metal fittings, exhausts, top overhaul the engine, clean up the carburetor, etc. and just go through hundreds of fittings that need sorting out. The getaway driver and myself are building a new double O gauge railway in the shed. It's about 18 feet long and 4 feet wide and looks rather splendid. But I happened to unearth a few of my old toys yesterday when we were sorting through boxes of things. You'll like this repair. It's very me. Look, the drive belt must have broken years ago, and in true Heath Robinson or Rube Goldberg style, it's got a piece of knotted string, which really does try to jump off now and then. It's quite as awful as it should be. I'm very pleased with that. I also found my fire engine. This is a Merryweather rather than a Dennis. This used to have a tank inside it and a sort of plunger here, and you could connect a hose up, and of course the hose lived coiled up inside, and it had a ladder which I might still have somewhere. Anyway, the inquisitive 10-year-old me tore it to pieces, lost half the bits, it never worked again. I suppose I was quite lucky to learn the folly of tearing things to pieces willy-nilly at such a young age, but I still remember that. It's a monument to childhood enthusiasm. You can go back on the shelf in the workshop. Anyway, that's about it for today. The sun's come out. I'm going a ronker flying. Thank you for watching.